And welcome to Citadel GrayLine, the show that's all about Citadel Bulldog sports. I'm executive producer Jon Rawl, in for one more week here as we've had Hurricane Florence in the news impacting South Carolina, North Carolina, and the entire southeast coast. And we want to keep all of our Citadel fans and all those along the coast in mind, and inland as well, as we're dealing with something a lot more important than football this week. And I know some of you may be watching this or listening to this after the storm moves in. Please keep in mind we recorded the show prior to its arrival, so if we sound a little dated, that's the reason. And we've got some wacky stuff going on, including the Citadel having to postpone the game against Charleston Southern, this scheduled for this Saturday at Johnson-Haygood Stadium. We've got Kyle Weaver joining us here. Kyle, I know you're from the coast of South Carolina. Hope all is well with you, as good as it can be right now.
Yes, sir. I grew up in Hilton Head, South Carolina. I currently live in Charleston still, so I guess this is something that Citadel sports and Citadel football in particular, as well as our fans, as well as the East Coast, are coming accustomed to. I think this is, during my time, we had to evacuate twice for hurricanes. I think they had to do it again last year. I think they're handling it a little different this year, which I'm also surprised to see. But so I think this is year 4 that they're going to have to deal with the postponed game. I'm glad to see that they were able to find a date that works for both teams and still play that game that I know as an alumni I'm looking forward to, that CSU game. So glad they could find that date, but this is something that Citadel fans will get used to.
We may have to relocate the military of South Carolina inland, as far inland as you possibly could go, maybe to somewhere like Fairplay, South Carolina. Do you know where Fairplay is?
I have no clue.
It's on I-85. If you're ever around Clemson and you decide to get on I-85 toward Atlanta, it's the last stop before you cross over the river into Georgia. That is where Fairplay SC is. But we're not going to move the campus quite yet. We'll talk about the loss to Chattanooga last week when we come back, and we'll try to make sense of what's going on with this 0-2 Citadel football team. You're listening to Citadel GrayLine from CRM Sports. And welcome back to Citadel GrayLine as we talk about the Citadel Bulldogs and the happenings at the Military College of South Carolina. I'm Jon Rawl in once again as we've had to relocate this week. We're in the Citadel GrayLine alcove, small alcove, by the way, and we're talking Bulldog sports. Jeff Hartsell is on hurricane assignment this week, so we'll let him do his important duty with the Post and Courier in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm joined by our usual host, Kyle Weaver. And Kyle, been a wacky week at the Citadel. We'll get into football in a minute, but the big news coming from Citadel football fans this week, there will be no game, as it was decided that this Saturday's scheduled game at home against Charleston Southern, we weren't sure what was going to happen, may be relocated, may not be played at all, but the officials at both schools, at Charleston Southern and the Citadel, have decided to move it to the Thursday following Thanksgiving. I think it's November 29th. Is the actual date. Kyle, do you know anything more about the decision-making that went in to making this change in the schedule to November 29th?
I do not know any of that. I was, pretty surprised to see that a decision was made so fast by the two programs. I mean, it is very difficult to come to agreements between two schools, two coaches, and two teams with, two different agendas, but I am happy that that game will be played and the Citadel will not lose a home game. So I'm happy about that, but I do not know what goes into any of the decision making, and I know that new athletic director is getting put to work already.
Yeah. Well, the problem, if they cancel the game, I assume the Citadel would have to refund everybody's tickets that bought tickets to the game. If you end up trying to make a game of it in some way, shape, or form, at least people who bought tickets won't be refunded, and that had to be part of the decision-making. I'm just throwing out a guess, but it's a logical guess, right? You're in the business world. You know how it's like, what it's like to make money.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. And another thing is We're off to an 0-2 start, so I know they're putting it after Thanksgiving break, which typically during my time there would be considered playoff time. And maybe this is something that I was interested to see that. You see how that will play if any of these teams do turn it around and make the playoffs. I think that will definitely bring an interesting dynamic into that.
Yeah, well, they have in the contract, evidently, a clause that says if either team makes the FCS playoffs, then the game will just end up being canceled. So
Gotcha.
we hope the game never gets played because if it doesn't get played, that means maybe the Citadel made the playoffs, which right now looks pretty good when you're 0-2.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll be definitely very happy with that season if we can get to the playoffs this year.
Yeah. Now, Kyle, you've been part of a team that's had to deal with hurricanes in the past. I guess you were part of the 2016 team that went 10-0 to start the season, and y'all had a hurricane or some kind of hurricane maybe that went to Florida, but they thought it might go to South Carolina originally. Or maybe, was that the one that went to Hilton Head? What one were you part of?
So I actually was part of the first two. So both times we went up to Travelers Rest, South Carolina, home of the famous Caleb Bennett. But we went up there and stayed at a church camp both times. Camp Bulldog is now what it's known as in the Bulldog Nation. But
its official name, isn't it Look Up Lodge or something like that?
Look Up Lodge, yeah, that sounds about right. And I don't know what two storms. I know it was the last storm that really did hit Hilton Head pretty hard. And I don't know the other one before that. But I know I was up there for two of them, 2 years back to back. My last 2 years, we had to go up there and change our plans. And, it's definitely something that having a mature team, which we did have, was a huge advantage during that time.
Yeah. Kyle, do you have any idea what the team's doing right now prior to this week's non-game? Are they dismissed? Are they going to a place like Look Up Lodge? Have you heard anything?
From what I've seen from players' Snapchats is they are actually able to go wherever they can. I think they're treating this as a bye week and actually giving the players some time off. So the players are kind of just dispersing to their hometowns, and the people who are from, like Tyler Davis, he's from Murrells Inland. I know he's evacuating with his family, but no, I do not know what the plan is, but it looks like, I'm pretty confident that it looks like they're kind of on their own, fending for themselves.
Okay. Well, we wish everybody well. Whenever you have to leave, as the governor of South Carolina, Henry McMaster, ordered in the week, everybody in coastal areas to evacuate. Now, that order ended up being changed for, Beaufort, Colleton, and Jasper counties. And that decision got changed. But, of course, the Citadel being in Charleston County, no choice there. And the governor made it kind of easy for people. Whenever he makes that kind of decision, you have to follow the order. And so they decided to just postpone the game, no game against Charleston Southern this week. And then, again, it's going to be on a Thursday, assuming this game will be played in late November. It'll be the final game of the week. It'll be the game after the Citadel's game at number 1 Alabama Crimson Tide. And so the Citadel will have more to play for than just getting shellacked perhaps by Alabama. And that final, what was supposed to be the final regular season of the game, will now be the next to last game, and they'll return to Johnson-Haygood Stadium. I don't have a clue if the Corps of Cadets will be back, as the game against Chattanooga this past weekend was the first home game where beer sales were allowed for Corps of Cadet members. I'm going to ask you, Kyle, how that went over as you were able to scout out the game in person this past weekend. But the Citadel, again, the whole school has been vacated, and the campus should be quiet the rest of the week, although we are thankful it appears the storm will not hit Charleston directly. We do hope and pray and wish all the best for all the North Carolina coast, possibly Virginia, even possibly South Carolina, wherever the thing ends up going into. And again, we want to remind you, if you're listening to our show post-hurricane landfall, please understand that we had to go ahead and get a show done this week, especially since the Citadel went ahead and canceled the game for this Saturday and moved it back later into the season. We'll get into the game against the Chattanooga Mocs. That happened this past Saturday. When we come back, we'll talk to Kyle Weaver, former Bulldog offensive lineman, get his thoughts on what happened as the Citadel had a heartbreaking loss for the second week in a row. My, oh my, oh my. We'll talk about it coming up on Citadel GrayLine from CRM Sports. We are back on Citadel GrayLine from CRM Sports. I'm Jon Rawl, executive producer in for Kyle Weaver. Kyle is with us this week. He's kind of riding shotgun with me here due to Hurricane Florence's arrival into the Carolinas. We had to shift things around. We're in a different studio setup this week. Jeff Hartsell will be back, hopefully, fingers crossed, back in the co-host chair next week when we're back in Mount Pleasant, off and going with a, what we hope, regular edition of Citadel GrayLine. But it's unfortunately become a tradition here on the show in the month of September, at least for the last several years. We've kind of been sidetracked by some kind of storm coming into the Charleston area, and it affects the way this show gets produced. But we hope you will enjoy what we have to offer, whether you're listening to us on one of our great radio stations, including Christian Talk 92.9, WLFJ, and AM 660 in Greenville and Spartanburg, South Carolina, both of those cities in the upstate. We appreciate our longtime affiliate, WLFJ Christian Talk, covering Citadel GrayLine and giving Bulldog fans in the upstate of South Carolina a great dose of Citadel information. Kyle Weaver is alongside me here on the program. The Citadel will not have a game this coming weekend as the game against Charleston Southern pushed back till late November. That was supposed to be the opponent this weekend. The Citadel now goes into this pseudo off week 0-2 on the season after they fell in overtime to the Chattanooga Mocs, 29-21. Now we're going to go through this game now with Kyle. And Kyle, this was a game that Chattanooga, once again, kind of like Wofford, they're the ones that got out on the board first. They got 14 first quarter points. The Citadel did get some points before halftime, but trailed 21-14 in halftime. Your thoughts on how the Citadel keeps getting behind both in the Wofford first game of the season and in the second game against Chattanooga? What's going on there that we're behind the eight ball?
Yeah, I mean, I guess every team has to find what it takes to get them going early in a game, what it takes to get mentally prepared for a game. And I guess these young players have not found what it's taking, the individuals to get ready for these games. And they're coming out. The offense is looking a little flat. They kind of got to see what the coaches are talking about a little bit more instead of just trusting. And then, on the defensive side of the ball, we got beat for a big pass deep, a long pass deep.
76-yard pass, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, and, so things like that you can't have. You're not going to win too many games where you let a 76, yard pass up. So, and I know the Wofford was the same thing. So we got to eliminate the big plays up front. I think once our team gets locked into they're backs against the walls, they're ready to play and they're beating these teams. They're just waiting. They're just getting pushed up against the wall a little too much for them to come back. So, and I know these coaches, they're going to do a good job at practice this week, having high intensity. Well, maybe not this week, but next week. But they're going to have high intensity periods in the front end of the practice instead of the back end of the practice. And that's going to make the players realize that, hey, I'm going to walk onto that field, I'm going to stretch, and the second I'm done stretching, I got to be ready for the first play of the game. And they're going to do that for a little bit. Then they'll go into their skill position works, and then they'll come back and have, high intensity periods to end their game or practice as well. So the coaches will figure it out. It's just, unfortunately, it's already a 0-2 start, and, they need to figure that out pretty quickly.
Well, I have to ask you, Kyle, the Bulldogs getting behind like they have against this week. Now, is that a recurring problem that the defense is allowing this to happen, or are we seeing – and you faced Chattanooga 2 years ago where Chattanooga came and the Citadel won that game, but 3 years ago in 2015, the Citadel lost to Chattanooga. Did you see a different Chattanooga Mocs team? Are they a much improved team in your opinion?
I actually think Chattanooga, when I was in the conference, Chattanooga was the premier team pretty much by far. So I actually think, since they've got this new coach, they've lost their quarterback and running back, I've actually seen Chattanooga's teams, I feel, fall. I don't think Chattanooga teams are as good as they used to be. But however, they're still big, they're still athletic, they're still getting great athletes, but I don't think they have superstars that they had when I was there.
Yeah.
I just think sometimes, the Citadel doesn't have the fastest secondary, or doesn't have has a young secondary, and Chattanooga, sometimes has those super fast players that they can recruit that super great athlete. And those are the guys who are burning us deep. But, if you look back at, all our times when we struggled and lost games, it's the same thing that beats us. It's the deep pass long. It's the big plays. It's offense just getting overpowered by the size and strength of the defensive line. So these are, problems that, they're not new to our program. However, it's just, not fun to have it back-to-back weeks.
Yeah. Well, Kyle, when I was at the Citadel, although I wasn't on the gridiron playing, when I was at the Citadel, Chattanooga had a receiver named Terrell Owens, also known as T.O., and we got to give that guy some love. Of course, he made it into the NFL Pro Football Hall of Fame this year, and you might remember he skipped out on the ceremony in Canton, and they had his Pro Football Hall of Fame induction where he gets the gold jacket. You might have one of those gold jackets somewhere in your closet, Kyle. But they had his enshrinement into the Pro Football Hall of Fame at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga back in August. So that was pretty cool, don't you think?
Yeah, I did not know that. I did see that the ESPN was making a big deal about him not showing up. But that is definitely a very cool event for that team and program. I remember T.O. was tweeting at the Twitter feed for their team when we were playing them.
Really?
We definitely used that as motivation. So, but overall, that's really cool. That's cool for their program, and something that a program that size is, not too many programs in AA football can say that, but
yeah,
that is pretty neat.
Yeah, pretty neat, and I thought he acted like a baby by not going to Canton, but to his defense, he didn't totally just skip out on an enshrinement. They did have something for him, and he attended at Chattanooga, and kudos to Owens and for UTC, which is one of the bigger schools in the Southern Conference, a team that and a program that maybe could have gone the Georgia Southern route at some point in their history, or Appalachian, and decided, we're too big for the little Citadels of the world. We're going to move up. Well, they've never done that. I don't think they will, and it's good to see that a SoCon alum like Terrell Owens getting in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Perhaps one of these days we'll have a Citadel man in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and we're not going to let this show get by without talking about Andre Roberts' big Monday Night Football. We're not going to talk about it now. We've got to keep you tuned in. But, boy, he had a big game in the New York Jets win over Detroit on Monday night. We'll get Kyle's take on that. But the Citadel does rally in the second half of the game against Chattanooga. They get 7 points in the third quarter thanks to Lorenzo Ward getting back into the end zone, and he powered the Bulldogs to a tie. But in the end, this was a game, Kyle, I don't know how you felt, but I felt like if the Citadel won this game, it was going to be a miracle. And they ended up losing, but they almost won. But had they won, it would have been like one of those where, man, I don't know how we won that one. Did you have that same mindset?
Yeah, definitely. They if I'm honest, I was surprised that they got into overtime. And then, to get into overtime off of them missing a missing a field goal, if we would have pulled that out in overtime, you would have sat there and said we got lucky for sure, because they have plenty of opportunities to finish us, and they should have finished us a lot earlier than they did. But that's you got to give respect to our players for continuing to fight and push. But at the same time, if we would have won that game, we definitely would have been looking back and said, well, we can't bank on that every time. That was definitely very lucky.
Well, it seemed to be a meltdown in more than one area for the Citadel Bulldogs on this night against Chattanooga. When we come back from the timeout, we're going to talk to Kyle more about this meltdown. I feel like the special teams let the Citadel down in this game. The offense could have done better. The defense did okay at times, but in the end, when it mattered most, we saw an article come out from Jeff where the defense evidently knew the play that Chattanooga was going to run when they had the game-winning two-point conversion in OT. I'll talk to Kyle more about that and much, much more as we roll on with more of Citadel GrayLine from CRM Sports. Stay where you are. We'll be right back, y'all. We are back on Citadel GrayLine from CRM Sports. Jon Rawl with Kyle Weaver. Jeff Hartsell's covering Hurricane Florence this week, so we'll let him do more important duties and give the readers of the Post and Courier all the great coverage that they need, and postandcourier.com for that. Also want to thank Tom McQueenie in Charleston, as he's been very gracious and let us use his office in Mount Pleasant. State Farm Insurance agent Tom McQueenie, Citadel alum and a loyal Bulldog. Thank you for your help. We'll get back in there one of these days. Kyle, I know you're having withdrawals after not being in there now for, 2 weeks now?
Yeah, it's definitely been an interesting dynamic, changing up the show like this. It's definitely not the routine I'm used to, as well as, work's throwing me for a little loops as far as having trainings on some Wednesday mornings and some other things that are unavoidable. But I definitely love being at the office and having that Facebook Live for our viewers.
And we will get on Facebook Live. We do have a video version this week, but it's going to be more of the YouTube as opposed to Facebook Live. We will get on there. We got a loyal, Kyle, I don't know if you know this, and I'm going to brag on our show. Our first episode this year, where you and Jeff were doing y'all's thing in Mount Pleasant on our first episode of 2018, that garnered more than 3,000 views on Facebook Live.
That's awesome. That is good stuff, and that just shows how the Citadel program has grown.
That's sadly almost as many people as were at the home opener against Chattanooga. If I may, this is not picking on you, Kyle. You were there. I can pick on myself. I was not there. However, I did drive more than 10 hours to go to the road game at Wofford in week 1. So I love my dogs, okay? But we can't make all the games. But for the Citadel to have a home opener at, I think, a decent time, 6 o'clock kick, and only had 8,000 people in the stands, Kyle, that's pretty bad.
I do agree with that. That is, and it's something that has definitely fallen since my freshman year. Even winning seasons, our attendance was lower than my freshman season. However, there is a lot of great ways to watch the games now.
Yeah.
For these people, they are able to watch it on ESPN Plus and have Tom Allen talking to them and all these things. So, I think, fortunately, that's kind of the way sports viewing is going. And as much as we would love to have more people in the stadium, I think, all these great venues to watch and keep up with the game from a remote location has changed how people view driving down to a game.
Yeah. Well, again, I'd love to see the Citadel get that east stands squared away and have a nice roughly 20,000 seat stadium again. But when they can't even fill it up halfway and you only have 8,000, it may be a good reason they aren't building that east side quite yet. Now, to the Citadel's defense, kind of going along with what you're saying, Kyle, this isn't just the Citadel having these problems. The biggest game in South Carolina this past Saturday, I would love to have said, was at Johnson Haygood Stadium, but it was probably at Williams-Brice Stadium. Wouldn't you agree that was a pretty big game?
Yeah, I mean, for a league that, is unimportant, it was a pretty big game, yeah.
Well, my point is, when Georgia comes to Williams-Brice Stadium, that is the biggest game in the stadium that year if Clemson's not coming. And Clemson ain't coming to Columbia this year. So that was the biggest home game of the year. And, Kyle, I don't know about you, but I saw – not a lot, but I saw a fair amount of empty seats, especially way up in the nosebleed sections at Williams-Brice Stadium. And that's hard to believe since Georgia, you would have thought they would have maybe helped fill up those empty seats.
Yeah. You know, I mean, hey, I'm telling you, you know, the people have these TVs set up in the tailgates, and they buy these tickets just in case they want to go in, but they realize that they're going to have a better time watching it from the tailgate with the cheap food and cheap beer. They realize that, you know, yeah, I bought that nosebleed, but it's not worth it for me. I'd rather watch it from the tailgate or from home.
You're true. That's absolutely right. And I just bought a ticket for a Citadel game this year, a home game, homecoming, and a ticket for an old fellow like me. And you're an old fellow now too, Kyle, but you might have a better connection than I do. $38 for a decent seat on the home side.
Yeah, you know, my trick is I just buy the general admission, and I mean, you can pretty much walk around, you know, the Citadel Stadium as you please. So, yeah, luckily I had some very generous alumni have some extra tickets and let me borrow those. But yeah, tickets aren't cheap. They got to make up for those lost people. You know, the less people show up, the more the tickets prices need to be.
Yep. So just pointing that out, I gladly paid the price, but $38 when you consider I went to a game at Georgia Tech in week 1, and I got myself and my son into that game for $18 total versus one ticket for $38 at Johnson Haygood. But, hey, I know it's going to a good cause, and they ought to let people like you, Kyle, in the door anytime you want. You ought to be able to own that field, frankly.
Man, I tell you, those people forget who I am very quickly.
Is that right? We're talking with Kyle Weaver, former Bulldog great, here on Citadel GrayLine, and the Citadel loses to Chattanooga in overtime last week. Now, I want to talk about special teams. I want to talk about the D, but Kyle, your thoughts on the offensive performance in this tough loss to the Mocs?
You know, obviously, you know, overall, so if you just look at how many points we put up, that is probably going to win us a few games, going to lose us a few games week in and week out. I am a little disappointed with, you know, the big disappointment is how we started. The offensive team did not start very well this week, and that, you know, got us down. And, you know, that puts a lot of pressure on the defense if we don't start moving the ball quickly. You know, we had a 3-and-out, maybe the second series of the game. And you can't have that. You got to get more views and more plays so that your coaches can figure out what their game plan is. But then they came back and finished strong. So, you know, 21 points, you know, and being able to get those, you know, get back into it, then scoring in overtime. You know, there's a lot of good there, but they just need to get off to a better start in the first quarter.
Yeah, well, they were definitely behind, and an option offense is never an offense that you want to count on for being able to come back in a big way in a football game. And we saw the Citadel did luckily come back, and they got some breaks along the way for that to happen. But in the end, Chattanooga just wouldn't go away. They were a pest, and the offense just seemed to not have an answer when it needed to happen. Now, Kyle, maybe I'm just not paying close enough attention, but I want to ask you, I guess it was more apparent to me in this game versus any game I've seen in recent years, but it seemed like the route that when the A-backs got the ball in this game as opposed to the B-backs, they were kind of doing a diagonal handoff and going kind of toward the center of the field. And I know there's better terminology I should be using, but do you know what I'm talking about?
So you're talking about the A-backs having basically an inside run.
Yes, correct? That is correct.
Yeah. You know, without using and giving away too much information, yeah, I mean, that's a play that we've had during my time as well. It's a little trickery to kind of get the teams to run outside, and then you're going to run it right up the middle. You can also use the fullback as an extra blocker. And it's just a weird look for the linebackers and stuff. But that is definitely a play, and typically – When you're in a huddle and you hear that play call, you're thinking, you know, a decent sized gain. That is typically a play where the coaches are seeing something that they believe they're going to be able to get 10-plus yards off of.
But have I been asleep under a rock, or has that been a play that's been used a lot in the last couple of years? Because it seemed kind of new to me.
So I don't think it was used very much during my time. Like I said, when it was called, we kind of got excited and, knew something must be up. But I know against Wofford, we did use it a good bit, and that was always a play against Wofford that has seemed to have success. So it might be something that the coaches are opening up, just trying to change and adapt and use more and more. But has been something that we've always had in the playbook with this coaching staff.
All those wild and crazy coaches, the Citadel has its own Philly special, like the Eagles, and that's what gets offensive linemen like Kyle Weaver giddy whenever they call that particular play. And don't give us the name. That's insider trading if you tell us the name here on Citadel GrayLine. But if you see the offensive lineman smiling, you might think if you're the defensive unit, hey, here comes that play again. All right, this is Citadel GrayLine. When we come back after the timeout, we're going to talk to Kyle about the defensive woes and special teams, as perhaps a field goal effort by the Citadel, a chip shot, could have led to a victory. We'll have all that and more when Citadel GrayLine returns right after the break. Stay with us. And we are back on Citadel GrayLine with Jon Rawl from the Citadel class of 1993 alongside Kyle Weaver, who wears the band of gold for the class of 2016. And we're talking Bulldog sports as the Citadel 0-2 on the young season after they lost their opener at Wofford to the Terriers in week 1, and they backed that up with a heartbreaking loss to Chattanooga in overtime this past weekend, losing by a score of 29-21. That's right, they lost by 8 in overtime because the Chattanooga Mocs decided to go. I'm sorry, they didn't lose by 9. They lost by 1. The score here from the Citadel is wrong. They lost, 29-28? Does that sound right, Kyle?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, the official box score for the Citadel has it wrong. They didn't update the Citadel's points. Citadel got 7 in overtime, which is what you usually get in an overtime game. Chattanooga, being the road dog, they decided, hey, we're going to go ahead and try to win this thing, and if we win it, great, and if we lose, well, we gave it our all. And they called a play that was brilliant and got a touchdown and then got the 2-point conversion, a brilliant play call there, to end up winning on a walk-off win in OT. Now, Kyle, I read somewhere from Jeff Hartsell, our normal co-host here on the show, that the Citadel may have even known that play was coming. What can you read into what Jeff wrote and what that scuttlebutt is about knowing that might have been an option?
I know typically, our coaching staff does have a good nose for what is coming, especially on plays like that. A team's playbook on a 2-point conversion typically is not too deep. Typically, a team has 1 or 2 2-point conversion plays that you're going to run, or maybe even just one until you run it, then you get a second. But overall, I would not be surprised if we knew it was coming. But, we go back to when my team lost to Chattanooga when we actually ended up sharing the SoCon. Is the first play of the game, we knew it was coming. We knew that they were going to do this, halfback pass, curtain play. But they still beat us on that too. So, listen, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make the horse drink. So, that happens, but it is very disappointing, and it's something I totally believe knowing this coaching staff.
Yeah. Now, the defense, of course, did have that one bad play, but look, they gave the offense plenty of time and plenty of effort to get more points on the board, and it just didn't happen on this night. So I don't want to throw the defense under the bus too much. However, special teams, as Jacob Godak missed a chip shot, a real easy field goal try. Now, it was on an angle down in the, what would that be, north end zone of the stadium. He could have possibly won the game had he made that, but it ended up not going for the Dogs. What did you think about the special teams play on this night?
I typically focus my attention on offense and defense and kind of look around and socialize during the special teams. But if I'm honest, but
Hey, you're a
obviously,
Citadel man. You got to be honest with us here.
yeah, exactly. That's what I was doing. So, but I think our special teams has definitely been an issue for us. Over the years, and something that we have a freshman punter, we have a kicker who's still trying to find his way, and all these things. So it's definitely an area that we could definitely improve on. And anytime you miss a field goal, that's pretty frustrating for everybody because it's not easy to get points in the SoCon and conference play, and when you miss an opportunity to get points. That's huge, and that could have cost us the game later down the road, or could have won us the game.
Well, Coach Thompson pretty well. It probably had to make him very irate that they even went for a field goal. He wants to get 6 each time his team has the ball, right?
Right, yeah. So now he's sitting there. It's going to make the offensive line and the offense even matter because now you have Coach Thompson blaming you for getting no points on the board instead of, we had to settle for 3. Now it's, we had to settle for 0 because you guys didn't, So, just more, there's going to be more emphasis on, finishing in the red zone, which is something preseason we talked about they had to improve on. But now that they didn't get any points, the coaching staff is just taking up another notch for the importance of finishing.
Well, again, the Citadel kicker, Godak, missed that chance to maybe put the Citadel ahead and possibly escape with a win. And then Chattanooga, you could say they had a chip shot, and they failed also right there at the end. What did you think about their miss?
Well, I loved it. I got super excited when I saw it. However, it goes back to we can't bank off of teams missing field goals for us to get into overtime and have a chance to win. But obviously, it was great that something like that went our way. So I was very excited. But something that in college sports, as an offensive lineman, I really don't understand how kickers miss field goals like that. But in that case, I'll accept it since it was the other team.
And for all our former kickers listening right now, Kyle Weaver, that was him saying that, and he was an offensive lineman. And Kyle, I'll be honest with you, we're being honest right here on today's show. I've never successfully kicked a field goal in my life. So I have to ask you, have you ever kicked a field goal, even in just practice or goofing around?
I have. I actually, I played at a very small high school, and when we started, beating teams pretty bad, we were able to kind of play around a little bit and move. So like one time my coach was just like on kickoff, he just told me to kick it. So I turned it, and got it to like the 10-yard line. It was not pretty at all. But that game, I also got to, kick the PAT. So
really,
was it pretty? No.
But did it count?
It counted though. But these guys, they have all their, my leg needs to be in this position and this and that, and it looks really good and goes really far. But I couldn't make anything over 15. And I don't even know if I can make 15, but I can make a PAT. I'm pretty confident on that.
Well, good for you, a man of many talents. I know you're pretty good with the old golf clubs too. So I didn't know you had it with your club foot. You could kick a field goal or a PAT. So kudos to you, Kyle Weaver, right here on the Citadel GrayLine, who has not only an undergrad degree from the mighty bastion on the Ashley River, he's got an MBA Citadel class of 2016 and more here on the Citadel GrayLine. We're coming at you with the heat on this week's Citadel GrayLine. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll continue talking about Bulldog football 2018, and also we'll talk about Bulldogs in the pros. Andre Roberts had a big night on Monday Night Football as the Jets took down the Detroit Lions, but also one of Weaver's former teammates, well, he's trying to make his mark in the NFL, and we'll get Kyle's take on his former teammate and I think maybe even classmate from the Citadel. We'll talk about that when we come up after the break. This is Citadel GrayLine from CRM Sports. And we're back with the final segment of Citadel GrayLine from CRM Sports with Kyle Weaver. I'm Jon Rawl. Jeff Hartsell will be back in the saddle next week. You can follow Jeff at Jeff_from the PC for all Citadel Bulldog news and information. And we appreciate what Jeff brings each and every week. When we don't have little hurricanes like Florence coming around, we'll have Jeff here with us usually on all occasions, and certainly bringing his great info from more than 250 episodes. That's how long we've been doing Citadel GrayLine, since 2008, back when Kyle Weaver was running around in diapers when we were doing this show. Right, Kyle?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, you guys have been doing this for a very long time.
We have, and we turned it over to the young guys, the young guns, and we're glad to do that because we have a really much better show with you and Jeff doing a great job in building our audience. But we want to thank you. We want to thank our listeners and our viewers who check out Citadel GrayLine on a regular basis. We try our best. By the way, you can reach out to us here on the program anytime you want to. We've got a number you can call. 803-816-1170 is the way you can reach out to us here and text us or call us with a question or comment. We've got an email address, citadel@yall.com. Email us if you got a question, comment, interview, suggestion. We do our Band of Gold Spotlight here from time to time, where we bring on people who may not even be a former athlete, but they have a great story and they have a connection to the Military College of South Carolina. We try to focus on all things Citadel here on this All Bulldog show. And we're talking with Kyle Weaver. And Kyle, we got to give love to Citadel class of 2007 or 8. I apologize. I should know it. Andre Roberts, he had a big night for the New York Jets Monday night as they took down the Detroit Lions. He had a punt return. I don't know if you saw that or not. He had a punt return for a touchdown in his opener for 2018. Not bad. And I saw him do that, oddly enough, against the Chattanooga Mocs in a Citadel home football game in 2007 in a rainy homecoming game. Andre Roberts' dramatic punt return led the Citadel to a win over UTC. We could have used him this past weekend at Johnson-Haygood Stadium, but I guess the Jets are paying him a lot more than the Citadel paid him. Did you see the game Monday night?
I haven't. However, I have seen via shares and people, Facebook, Citadel fans, posting that all over Facebook. So I was able to see the play, and I was very happy to see that a Citadel grad was succeeding for the Jets.
Do you have a favorite? Well, I know who your favorite team. It's the same one as mine. It's the Carolina Panthers, right?
That's right. Keep pounding.
Yeah, I was wishing so bad that he would sign with the Panthers. He's been with about every NFL franchise in the last couple of years. But Andre, I don't know if you and I maybe should follow his lead, Kyle, and get the Andre Roberts long hair like he's got. Something tells me that wouldn't be safe if you play football to have the hair hanging out like he's got, but it's been working for him for several years. And he doesn't look very cadet-like, but he looks very football-like when he's scoring those punt returns for TDs. So good job. And I saw he also got some more playing time on offense for the Jets, as he didn't hardly play any offense last year when he was with the Atlanta Falcons, but now switching teams to the Jets, and he's got an opportunity there. Now, another Citadel alum at least made it to a practice squad, and I don't know if anything's changed since that announcement came out. A former teammate of yours, D. Delaney. Kyle, what do you know about D and his pursuit to play in the NFL?
Yeah, from what I've heard, D made the I think it's an 8-man practice squad with the Jaguars.
Okay.
And basically, I'm very impressed. I mean, that is a secondary that is second to none at the moment. And for him to be able to be on that practice squad and be able to be around the facilities and grow and have the opportunity to potentially be moved up, that's great. So I saw his mother actually came to the Citadel game.
Really?
So I was able to say hello to her. She was dressed in all Miami stuff. But,
Miami? Hurricanes.
The Hurricanes.
Okay, because I thought you were talking about Dolphins when you first said that, and I was like, no, he's with the Jaguars, I thought. So she shows up at a Citadel game where her son played for 3 years and got a degree, and she was wearing all Miami Hurricanes garb?
That's right.
Okay.
But, just happy to see her and say congratulations to her as a mother.
Y'all from the same county, aren't you?
We are. So we're from the far ends of the county. So I am about as far south as we can go in the county.
And that would be Beaufort County we're talking about.
Yep, and he is on the far north as you can go. He's basically Walterboro almost. So we are in the same county, but about an hour away from each other, maybe a little bit less than that.
And I think I incorrectly said a while ago he might be your classmate. He's class of 2017, right?
He is class of 2017. That does sound right.
Okay. So that's why he graduated from the Citadel in like May, went to Miami, played for the Hurricanes for that one season in 2017. And look, he's getting his chance in the NFL. A lot of people thought his decision to go to Miami would either make him go way up in draft stock or possibly because of it being a step up in competition. He may have, maybe not he may have gotten more attention coming out of the Citadel with a fourth year of playing. You just never know, but it doesn't matter. He's now at the NFL level with a chance to show people what he's got, and we wish D. Delaney all the best. Jaguars, I think they had a big Week 1 win at the New York Giants, so that was good for their former coach and coach to the Giants, Tom Coughlin, now in an administrative role with the Jaguars, but the Jags getting a win in Week 1 over the New York Giants. Okay, Citadel football. They are not playing this weekend. Kyle, what is the best advice you could give this football team right now at 0-2 with a hurricane going on, no game this weekend? What do they need to do to get their heads on squared away and get ready for the next game on the schedule?
Well, I'll tell you this first. I'll tell you what they don't need to do. They don't need to go with this time off with this hurricane and make a fool of themselves and make greater mistakes, as they get to maybe go experience being at Georgia for a week or some, wherever they evacuated to their home, being with people who don't have as bright as future as themselves. So that's the big thing is, don't make anything worse by going out and making a stupid decision and messing with the law and all those things. And then secondly, they need to come back. And when they come back, they need to be ready for work. They need to be excited to be back and excited to practice instead of viewing it as like, man, I wish I was still on this hurricane. So it's all about mindset, and they just need to make sure that they have the right mindset and come back ready to work and, continue to focus on the goals.
Kyle, best of luck to you and your family as they live on the coast of South Carolina. As Hurricane Florence passes through, we want to remind people about our prayers, our thoughts with everybody, no matter where you are in the South, as this storm makes its way through the area this week. We appreciate everybody being with us and bearing with us as we got through this show once again and away from our normal routine in Mount Pleasant. But we'll hopefully be back, fingers crossed, back in the saddle in our normal location with Kyle and Jeff next week. Kyle, best of luck to you. Enjoy your open weekend.
Well, I will, and everybody stay safe.
All right, Kyle Weaver here on the Citadel GrayLine. Thank you, all of you listening and watching Citadel GrayLine, a production of CRM Sports. Again, our number is 803-816-1170. Would love to hear from you. Citadel@y'all.com is the email address. Until next week's show, Jon Rawl thanking you so much for being a part of our All Citadel show. We'll be back with you. Fall out and go Bulldogs.